The Miami Heat are going to the NBA Finals again. And Boston, there's not much to really say here, except for we all should have seen this coming after the first round series against Atlanta. And the Sixers, you've managed to disappoint me yet again, especially after seeing how disappointing Boston has played in the conference finals. The reason I say that is because Trey Young was cooking y'all and took 2 games from you, Boston. That Atlanta Hawks team had no business even winning 1 game against you, and they took two. And they even won while their second best player was suspended. So we all really should have seen this coming, Boston, because Philly, they ain't really got that dog in them, and they managed to take you to 7. You lost to them when Joel Embiid was hurt. You let James Harden score 45 2 times. He scored 40 plus points 2 times. And in every other game, it was like, oh, he's one of the worst players on the planet. So this just shows that Boston's defense picks and chooses the days they want to show up. And that's part of the reason why Miami Heat is about to send them home again, because remember, the Heat beat them in the bubble as well. The Heat just had that dog in them. Like, there's no other way to put it. Jimmy Butler don't do anything in the regular season, so we all forget about him. And then come playoff time, he's one of the best players on the planet. And that's a lot because it's got a lot to do with the fact that he understands that he just needs to save himself for the postseason, but it also benefits Miami Heat. And we've seen that in this postseason because the Heat have only won a lot of these games against the Bucks or Celtics because of what role players have done. And well, Jimmy Butler having 40 plus like crazy offensive games. But it's got more to do with the fact that the Heat know how to win without Jimmy Butler playing well because he doesn't do anything like what he does in the postseason during the regular season. So the Miami Heat players are prepared for this moment because they've been preparing for during the regular season. And that's a lot of props to the coaching staff as well. Eric Spoelstra is probably the best coach in the NBA, and he keeps proving that. And we keep forgetting because last year the Heat were the 1 seed, and no one was really talking about them, and they lost in the conference finals, and it was like, oh, whatever. And then in the bubble, they beat the Bucks, who were the favorites, and they beat the Celtics, and it's a lot to do with coaching of Eric Spoelstra because the bubble team had no business going to the finals. This team had no business going to the finals, but yet they are in the finals. I do want to say though, Giannis getting hurt, that kind of made it able to happen for the Heat, but you don't really go to conference finals or finals without a key player on a team that you beat getting hurt. Like every finals run has had a situation where that's happened. So I'm not going to hold it against Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. The next thing I want to talk about is the Boston Celtics, and I want to elaborate on why they haven't been as good as we expected in the postseason so far. Coming into the postseason, they were matched up with the Hawks in the first round. We thought that should have been a sweep, maybe 5 games, and it went to 6. And that was like a shock for a lot of people since if you look on paper, the Celtics are the best team in the NBA on paper in my opinion. They're better than the Bucks on paper. And that's got a lot to do with their depth and also Malcolm Brogdon off your bench. Malcolm Brogdon is a very 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 good point guard and is very very underrated. So having a guy like him off your bench should honestly make you a contender immediately because if he's not starting, you must have a good point guard ahead of him, which they do in Marcus Smart. But I think they need to start closing games with Brogdon on the court, and that's part of what their problem has been during closeout games, such as the ones in Philly where they've lost, and then the ones against Atlanta that they lost. And then, of course, the games they've lost to the Heat that have been close. And I think Malcolm Brogdon being the sixth man of the year, I think he needs to be on the court in crunch time. So Joe Mazzulla, you should have made that change a while ago. But Boston is really unorganized late in games, and that's why they have lost most of these games. And Brogdon is a better and more complete point guard than Marcus Smart offensively. I think both of them should be on the court at the same time, but you can't have Al Horford and Robert Williams in the closing minutes of the game. They're great in the middle of the game and like the start of the game, but when you're closing games, you need good free throw shooters. You need smart and high IQ players, and that's what Brogdon brings. And he hasn't been closing a lot of games, and I think that's part of the problem with this Boston team, and that's why they lose a lot of close games. Another reason why they're losing a lot of these close games is because role players are trying to do too much down the stretch instead of letting Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum operate. And Jaylen Brown is going to leave Boston at the end of the season. I'm just saying that right now. He's going to request a trade. They don't use him after the first quarter, and he really falls out of the game. And I think Jaylen Brown is a two option on a championship team. So this just must mean that Jason Tatum isn't a one, in my opinion. So Jason Tatum, you got to decide whether you want to be a Paul George or a LeBron James, in my opinion. There's no way else to see it. He gets to the conference finals almost every year, and then once you're in the conference finals, you start to struggle. But this year, the struggle has been in the whole playoffs, essentially, except for against the Hawks, really. And you didn't even play that hot in the Hawks series. But you got to decide, do you want to be Paul George or LeBron James? Since I think Jason Tatum has the potential to be the next LeBron James, but he's got to show up. Tatum, Brown, I know your role players have tried to take the ball and do stuff down the stretch, which is a big problem. Boston, you are too reliant on your role players playing good. You shoot way too many threes and you're way too reliant on it. You got to stop relying on people like Derek White to hit threes. He's never been a great three-point shooter. He was this regular season, but everyone's shooting numbers tend to slip in postseason. And Derek White didn't shoot well last postseason. And you're expecting him to hit a lot of threes, and that's why he's on the bench now. Al Horford can't buy a three, well, couldn't in the Philly series and the first two games of this Miami series. And you've become reliant on three-point shooting from your role players. And that's why you lose a lot of these games. And every game you've won, it feels like, has been a blowout, and someone has gotten hot from three. Game 7, Tatum didn't miss. Game 6 in Philly, Tatum had a crazy fourth quarter, but you were looking like you were going to get eliminated in Game 6 until that happened. So you are relying on players' three-point shooting, because in Game 7 against Philly, it wasn't just Tatum that was hitting threes. They would double Tatum, boom, three, 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 and that's why you won. But you've become so reliant on it that now when you're playing a team like Miami who knows how to play good defense and run you off the three-point line, you look lost and unorganized, and you look scared on the court. There's no other way to put it. So quit relying on threes, but you're going home. Come back next year. Jaylen Brown wants out of Boston. Y'all don't use him down the stretch. Start Malcolm Brogdon. He's a starting point guard. He's not a six man, even though he is great off the bench. But he's not a six man. He's a starting point guard. All right, so now we're gonna look at the box score and see what else happened. You lost by 26 points. It looked like you lost by 70. Like, that was a terrible performance. Miami Heat just made you look stupid. There's no other way to put it. They made you look like a G League team, and that's embarrassing, especially if you're the 2 seed. And you have no injuries, so you can't really have that excuse. But let's look Tatum and Brown, you each had under 15 points. That's a big reason why you're going home. Jaylen Brown, I don't blame you as much because the whole postseason, your teammates have gone away from you. So I don't blame you. I blame Tatum since he's been terrible for the most part all postseason. I don't care what he did in Game 7. It wouldn't have needed to go to Game 7 if he played halfway decent in most of the games. And unlike Philly, where Joel Embiid and James Harden tend to quit during games if it's not going well. So when the role players played well for the Celtics, you could easily take the hearts out of Philly and win. Boston isn't, my fault. Miami isn't the same team. Miami wants to win, and they will do anything they can to win. So, you gotta play harder and you gotta play more as a team, Boston. Since 8 points for Horford, I think that's one of his best games. Marcus Smart didn't even have a bad game. If you look at his stats, those might be fake stats, but you got Derek White, 9 points. He's not been great this postseason. Grant Williams, he was the only one who played with heart for you, Boston. And Grant Williams, he's going to leave you in this offseason too. He's going to the Portland Trail Blazers. Call him that right now. Perfect fit. Malcolm Brogdon didn't score. And every game, so when I've watched these games and I've been rooting against Boston, it seems like every time Brogdon shoots it, it goes in. And he had 0 points. You're relying on a guy off the bench to score a lot for you. He's coming off the bench. You need to start him, first of all. But if you're going to have him come off the bench, you shouldn't be relying on the 18 points a game he's been scoring for y'all. And I'm sorry. I just got a lot on my mind on Boston. Robert Williams, he's a really good center. He's going to be a future. I think he'll be a Celtic with Tatum for a long, long, long time. And he's going to be the starting center eventually. And then I'm not going to go any farther down there. Let's look at the Heat. Jimmy Butler only had 16 and you lost by... Jimmy Butler had 16 points and you lost by 26 points and you gave up 128 to the Heat. Think about that. That means you let... Bam didn't even score a lot either. You let Gabe Vincent go off, Caleb Martin go off, Duncan Robinson go off. What were you doing on defense? This makes no sense. Kevin Love got hurt. Max Strus, 10 points. But you let him cook in another game. But you let Duncan Robinson score 22. This man was out of the rotation for the whole season. Go at him on defense and make him make Spoelstra take him out the game. Just put Tatum, attack Robinson. It's not that hard. He is a defensive liability. He was out of the rotation for a reason. And Miami don't even have Oladipo or Tyler Hero. Imagine what would happen if they had them. Y'all would have probably lost this game 140 to 1. Nah, you probably wouldn't even scored 100 because Duncan Robinson is not a good defender. And I'm assuming as he's on the court, you should be attacking him, but you clearly didn't do that because you let him go off for 22 points. I don't know how else to say. I really don't. You let 1, 2, 3, 4. You let 4 role players score double-digit points again. You get a pass for that because you're on the road, but you let it happen in your own building in game 2. This has been very, very disappointing. I thought Boston would easily be in the finals right now, but I don't know what they're doing. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want to hear anything in the comment section. Just DM me on Insta, whatnot. And as always, this has been Bold Hoops with Jay Hoopa.